YouTube folks, feel free to jump ahead about 2 minutes. I said I'd start at about 9:15, and it's still about 2 minutes until then, so I want to give people some time to get into the chat so I don't repeat some of my opening remarks a whole bunch. All right, so how does this look? That probably looks about right. Can I fit a deck list too, though? Can. Neat. It's not the most, like, elegant or pretty thing, but it works for my purposes today. So, I want to give PV the benefit of the doubt, because I bet what happened is Channel Fireball came to him and said, we need an article today on this, and then he probably had to write that in an hour or two. So I think that was a much lower quality article than most of the other things that he has produced in the past, and I'm 100% going to blame that on deadlines and trying to get something out very quickly, rather than, like, everything that's there is his, like, absolute thoughts. I didn't read the full article. I kind of skimmed over a bunch of the headings and looked at some of the formatting and looked at some of the deck lists and then went, I was a little unsure about some of the things that were there and didn't do some of the follow-up reading. I spent a lot of time prepping for this talk this morning, rather than reading a whole bunch of other people's thoughts. So I'm expecting quite a few people this morning, so I'm just going to kind of linger here for a couple of minutes before starting up. I'm going to start up in maybe about 2 minutes. But before I start up, I want to highlight a tweet that Julian put out yesterday morning, last night, that I thought was really good. So for anyone who's just listening, he said, Legacy right now is basically the card gaming equivalent of the N-body problem. Don't try to figure out how decks will influence each other. Just go out there with your optimized deck and see what you can do. Then adapt. Then adapt again. Don't theorycraft playing one match a week. And I think this is, like, a really important statement about Legacy right now. This banning is probably the biggest shakeup that Legacy has seen in the entire time that I've been playing Legacy. I mean, this is obviously an opinion, but, like, multiple Tier 1 decks are going to have to change drastically in order to stay where they're at. Some Tier 1 decks are not going to be as competitive. Many Tier 2 decks are losing a key piece, and many Rogue and Fringe decks are going to just die, in all honesty. Deathrite Shaman was the glue holding together a lot of decks that were shaky on a number of levels, and that's going to be gone. And, like, combo, aggro, and control decks are all losing out right now, so the format is going to shift drastically. Like, the top banning caused some big changes, but I think this shakeup is going to be much, much bigger in the grand scheme of things. License to Pill, thank you very much for subscribing. I appreciate your support, and I hope that you enjoy today's talk. Yeah, I agree, Static Grip. This is huge. Yes, that tasty, tasty Amazon Prime dollars. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and begin? Good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Gallagher. I run ThrabenU University, and today is an exciting day on a number of levels. A, watching from work, I hope nobody catches me. Is it even a big deal in the grand scheme of things if you get caught a little bit? As long as you're doing some work, it's probably fine. I don't know. I don't remember what your job is off the top of my head. It's probably all right. Big day, big day. All right, so this is an important day for, I think, two reasons. First is that this ban, I should say both of these bans happening is a direct result of Wizards listening to the dedicated player base who really pointed out cards that were warping the format in negative ways. So, like, I don't need to beat the dead horse here. You all know why Deathrite Shaman and Gataxian Probe weren't healthy. And having those cards gone means that, like, Legacy is probably going to be really cool for a little while. A lot of decks had been really pushed out of the format by some combination of Pile and Grixis Delver, and those decks are free now. And Legacy is going to be really open, and there's going to be a lot of exploration, and that's very exciting. So, like, I think reason one to be excited is Wizards listen to the Legacy community. And historically, that's not something that's necessarily happened. I mean, if we look at how long, like, Miracles ran wild with the format, like, they were willing to just say, Legacy is what Legacy is. But, like, this time around, like, when it got to the point where, like, Deathrite was really warping things, it only took a few, like, ban and restricted announcement periods passing before they finally decided to do something about it. And that was probably them just, like, waiting and collecting more data. And I'm honestly really surprised they banned Probe, and I'm very, very happy about that. Because it eliminated a lot of the coolest parts of Magic, in my opinion. Like, the ability to bluff was just absolutely destroyed by that card. And I'm happy to see it gone. Yeah, so that being said, what I want to transition into now is my opinion on, like, what decks are winners here, what decks are losers here, what decks are coming out about the same. So I spent a few hours in between classes and activities and such yesterday just, like, going through and writing this, like, crazy Legacy manifesto about, like, how decks are changing, how decks are going to be altering, what I think the metagame is going to look like. And this is a two-way discussion, and I want to make that clear from the beginning. This is sort of my opinions that I'm throwing out there for you as someone who plays a lot of Legacy and is relatively experienced, but this is meant to be a discussion. So I want to start with the decks that I think are most poised to, oops, sorry, rip Julian tweet and deck list. So kind of the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk about how I think about 15 decks are going to change. I'm going to talk about what I think the metagame is going to look like, and then I'm going to talk about my starting point for a D&T list. So those are sort of my 3 steps for this discussion. Note that this is not exhaustive. These are just the decks that I personally focused on when I was sort of mentally mapping everything out. All right, so I want to begin with Miracles. Checkpile was just, like, the de facto control deck of the format. It just kind of handled mostly everything well, with a few exceptions. So with that gone, I think that a lot of the control players are going to gravitate towards Miracles, and I think that's going to be a really good deck choice moving forward. Because the stock of mana denial cards like Wasteland is going to skyrocket with Deathrite Shaman out of the format. So decks like D&T and Miracles that can play a lot of basic lands will dodge some degree of the hate that I expect to see in this new format. Miracles was probably already an excellent deck choice in the format. It tended to be not always as well represented as maybe it deserved, but the deck was hyper consistent with tons of cantrips gluing it together, and, you know, it's rarely a bad thing to be casting a Jace, you know? So I think Miracles as a basic heavy deck that already was a good control deck and that is very consistent and objectively powerful, with cards like Mentor and Jace just being able to like take over the game, and Terminus being a catch-all answer to difficult things to answer, like say Nimble Mongoose and True Name Nemesis. I think Miracles is going to probably, at least in the short term, be the best control deck of the format. Yeah, Lord Darkview, I will get to green mid-range, and by green mid-range I mean things like Loam and Maverick. But we'll get there. Alright, so now we'll move on to D&T, and I'm just going to say a little bit now, and then we'll kind of come back to this in a little bit. Because, you know, obviously I'm the D&T guy, so you want to hear lots about that. But we'll talk about that when we get to the actual deck list. So D&T is getting 2 strong new tools in the form of Brightling, which is just stellar. If you haven't playtested with that card yet, you need to. Whether that's like with it or against it, one way or another, you need to playtest against this card. It's hard to use, and it is insanely powerful. Remorseful Cleric is also going to be very good. I expect this card to be main decked as a 1 or a 2 of in the metagame that I expect to see. Because sort of like the obvious level 1 sort of obvious thing about the new format is Deathrite Shaman is gone, main deck Grave Hate decreases, so decks like Dredge and Reanimator might pick up in value. That's like obvious level 1 sort of conclusion from the ban and restricted update. But we'll talk about that more when I get to the Reanimator slot, because I'm not actually sure how much Reanimator and Dredge are actually going to get, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so D&T is getting sweet new tools. Wasteland is going to be better than it's been in the past 6 to 10 months, for sure. K-Command is going to be decreasing, probably not disappearing from the format, but you're not going to play against K-Command every 3rd round or something like that. And as a whole, Mana Denial is going to be a strong strategy in one way or another. It might not be unrealistic to say that your win percentage with D&T might shoot up 5 to 10% in the new format once it's stabilized. You know, again, sometimes in the opening weeks of a new format, it's difficult to play a control deck, so like your D&T deck lists might not be optimized for a little while. But I think once we get to the period where the metagame stabilizes a little bit, D&T will be one of the decks to beat, unquestionably. We'll also see how much hate people start packing for D&T because of that, though. And that's going to be unclear for a little while. I have to stop clicking on things. It makes all my goodies disappear. I should have just taken a screen cap of this. That's a note for future Phil. All right, next up, I think the Mongoose is back. I think the goose is loose. So going back to, oh, I don't know, when was that? So that was 2011. Going back to like maybe like 2013 or 2014 Legacy, Rug Delver was the Delver deck to beat. Just at that time, it was unquestionably better than Grixis Delver and Bug Delver, and it was absolutely all over the place. Rug Delver tends to have the strongest mana denial elements of a lot of the Delver archetypes, because you're playing with Wasteland and you're playing with Stifle, and you get like Goyf as a silly fast clock. So if you like stifle a land, waste a land, play a Goyf, like in some instances, like the Goyf just like 4-turn clocks them or something like that, and they just die. So I think Rug Delver is likely going to be in a good position moving forward, and I expect it to be the Delver deck to beat probably at least for the first 2 or 3 months of the new format. It's possible that a Grixis Delver or a Bug Delver deck will emerge as well. But I think Rug Delver is just going to be the safest and easiest Delver build to transition to in a new and unknown format. Potentia, that is a really good question. If Graveyard hate will increase, how can one expect Goyfs and Threshold to thrive? Well, I want you to think about what Graveyard hate people are probably going to play. Most of the blue decks are going to be playing, like, Surgicals and Fairies, right? Those aren't things that are good against Tarmogoyf. You're not going to see nearly as much Rest in Peace as you are other faster and more specific Graveyard hate. So I don't think we'll see nearly as much Rest in Peace as we do Surgicals, Fairies, Grafdigger Cages, and things of that nature. Yeah, so I'll talk about Delver when we get to the big losers pile. I'll save most of my other discussion for there. All right, so I think Goblins is also going to be a big winner. So I think this for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're getting Goblin Trash Master, which is a huge upgrade to Tuk Tuk Scrapper for that deck. So Trash Master is not only a Lord, but it is repeatable artifact destruction. So if you get this bugger in play, and like let's say you're playing against D&T, you can just like kill 3 irrelevant goblins, get the Sword of Fire and Ice, the Batterskull, and the Aether Vial all in one turn there, and this is just like repeatable, just like again and again and again. So like if D&T is well positioned and is going to be a deck to beat, just having access to like a Goblin Trash Master in the 75 is going to be like so good there. Goblins also gets a little bit better with Deathrite Shaman gone. That card was just like obnoxious for Goblins to deal with, and it resulted them usually playing a whole playset of Tarfire, which isn't necessarily where Goblins wants to be. You probably want like at least a Tarfire in the 75 somewhere to tutor for. Like, you know, Delver decks aren't going anywhere. Delver is still going to be one of like the predominant and best like tier 1 strategies, unquestionably. But like having to play 4 Tarfires just to like try to get your Goblins through was rough. And a lot of the builds were also like having to play Warren Instigators to just like try to get something to connect that could dump Goblins into play, because it was just so hard against all of Pile's removal. So I think it is very possible that like Goblins makes a comeback. I'm not saying like Goblins for tier 1 or anything like that, but I would no longer be surprised to be paired against Goblins in tournaments, and I think this is a deck that people will start messing around with again. So, Goblins combo matchup isn't always the best. What Goblins has going for it against combo is that on a lackey start, you can steal a lot of games by dumping something big and stupid into play pretty easily. And so Goblins usually has to like either splash white for Thalia or play something like Thorn in the sideboard, or like play some very cheap interaction of some nature or free interaction like Leylines or Surgicals to deal with the graveyard decks. I wouldn't be overly surprised to get paired against Goblins regularly. Okay, so these are the decks that I think benefit the most from the bannings. So let's talk more generically about decks that get better, but not a lot better, just some better. I have to stop doing that. All right. Zulu, my general opinion of Merfolk is fuck the fish people. I hate Merfolk. I just dislike that deck greatly, in every way, in every format. I hate the fish people. All right, but moving on. Something about Merfolk just rubs me the wrong way. I just dislike it. I don't think the deck's good. I just think it's a worse Aether Vial deck than most other tribe decks most of the time. Like, Merfolk hasn't been good since, like, 2014. All So I think lands gets a tiny bit better, not a lot better. So what's going to make lands better in some ways is that Deathrite Shaman isn't going to be around to, like, A, eat your lands that are important for you to get back. B, eat your loam that would get you back said lands. And C, eat your punishing fire that otherwise might deal with the Deathrite Shaman. It's not like lands, like, really had that much trouble with Deathrite Shaman anyway, though. Because, like, it's not that fast of a clock. It's a little bit annoying. You can sometimes go and power through that. But it's a non-zero factor. So I don't think it's a major improvement, but I think the generic tools that lands will bring to the table will probably be fine to fight an open format, right? Like, a lands deck list doesn't change a ton, I think, with the way the format is going to warp. Like, the sideboard probably needs to change, but your main deck probably won't alter all of that much outside of some flex slots. So, like, this is probably a good safe deck to, like, dabble your toes in Legacy and see where things go. NW Robinson, you've prepared for the Grizzlebrand Overlords, I see. All right, that's fair. Yeah, so Potentia, the big question is, like, how will lands do in the post sideboard world with more graveyard hate? And I think the answer is fine. So, like, lands is going to be a good surface level deck, and I think lands can play through some graveyard hate and post sideboard games okay, especially when they get to, like, bring in things like tireless trackers and such as alternate win conditions and card draw engines. So I think they'll actually be okay. Yeah, this is why they're in, like, the slight winners, right? Because, like, Deathrite gone is good, but some of the other ramifications might not be. All right, so elephant in the room, Reanimator. And I'm just going to refer to Reanimator here generically because, like, time will tell whether, like, it's time to go back to blue-black Reanimator, whether we stay with black-red Reanimator, or whether, like, some deck like Tin Fins actually ends up being better positioned. I suspect it's just going to continue to be black-red Reanimator, but some people are hyping up blue-black in various places. Folly, what was the banning? I have good news for you, friend. Deathrite Shaman and Probe are gone. Deathrite and Probe. We got both. I'm glad I got to break that to you. Okay, so Killing Form, that's a great question. So just to read this aloud, how much more graveyard hate can we really expect? Because sideboards are pretty packed, bringing more graveyard hate means cutting something somewhere else. Yes, that is true. If you want to, like, consider that and like what it means for the new format, pull up deck lists from like pre-surgical and Rest in Peace maybe, and look at how much graveyard hate they were playing. Some of the, like, first Legacy deck lists that I played had, like, regularly 6 or 8 graveyard hate cards in them. Like, there used to be a time when sideboards were really full of graveyard hate cards that were meant to fight those matchups specifically. And, like, even the cantrip decks used to play much more graveyard hate than they do now. Everyone's kind of, like, gotten away with it for a little while. But now to keep the Reanimator and other graveyard-based decks in check, I like, people have to start playing more graveyard hate in the sideboard. So yes, that does mean that some of the more... Sorry, let me rephrase that. Some of the less... some of the more specialized cards that we've been seeing in sideboards might disappear. So, for example, so many decks recently have had room to play things like Marsh Casualties and Diabolic Edicts that just, like, could not be played previously just due to not having room, and some of that ability is going to just disappear. Alright. So, Reanimator is an obvious winner, and so people are going to prepare for it. So Reanimator is going to end up, like, net only being slightly better than it is now, in all likelihood. Alright, so Dredge, and by extension other graveyard-based combo decks, are going to have a very good Game 1 win percentage, but likely a poorer Game 2 and 3 win percentage than normal. So that's why I'm putting Dredge in, like, the slight winner category here. You're going to get a lot of free roll Game 1s like you used to with Dredge. Like, so many free Game 1s. And then you just have to be able to steal one of the 2 post-sideboard games. And expect to see this deck more, but not significantly more. Yeah, so Zulu, that's always been the case for Dredge, right? Dredge is always a deck that has a great Game 1 percentage and an average to slightly below average Game 2 and 3 win percentage. That's just going to be, like, pushed more to the extreme. Alright, and now we get to the green mid-range decks. By this, I mean any green wasteland deck, really. So I'm referring to things like Maverick and Aggro Loam. I think these are going to be slight winners in the format because Deathrite Shaman kind of kept some of that stuff in check, especially the Wasteland game plan and things like Loam and Ramunap Excavator that would allow you to recycle those Wastelands. I think that angle of attack is going to be better than it's been in a little while. And we'll see where those go. I don't really think that, like, Loam or Maverick are going to be, like, tier 1, but I think they're going to be fine choices, and they might end up attacking some of the top decks well. We'll kind of see where that goes. I was talking with some people yesterday, and I was talking with Miranda Keith, and she was of the opinion that Maverick is likely to be well positioned, but is also really interested in playing D&T. Alright, so this is my grouping of I think the groups that are going to immediately benefit from the new format. And I want to talk about a couple of neutral decks. And I'm going to just lump these both together and talk about them as one. It might not seem that like they're similar, but I think these are good neutral decks. So let me explain what I mean by that. In a new format where there's uncertainty, it's often a good idea to play something that is powerful, linear, quick, and slightly disruptive. And I think Eldrazi and Show and Tell fit well into this category. And I think these are decks that you can just, like, pick up and play with minimal changes to the 75 in the next 2 or 3 weeks while the format is unknown and do well with them. So, like, Chalice is still going to be good. Thought Not Searing Reality Smasher, they're still going to be good. Those are going to close games quickly. That combination of lock pieces and speed is good. While people are still stumbling around with unoptimized deck lists, I think people are going to crush with Eldrazi, and people are just going to cast a Show and Tell on turn 2 and see what happens. So I think these are good, safe decks to play around with if you don't want to take any risks. Sure, Static Grip, we can do that. Nope. Yes. Gamer Champ, what do you mean? Are you referring to one specific deck or more generally? So Ling, we've talked about the winners, and we're currently on the neutral category. We're moving in this direction now. I'll talk about Painter. Or, sorry, I'll talk about Stoneblade. No, I'll talk to Zach in the next day or two. That didn't happen last night. But he's one of my primary sounding boards. All right, so again, in this neutral category, I'm just referring to decks that are probably like fine and require minimal changes in order to be fine or good in the format. All right, so let's talk about the losers. I think the first two of these are kind of obvious. The third one, maybe not so. All right, so Ant loses Probe. This isn't that big of a deal. So Probe does two things in that deck. One, it lets you see if the coast is clear. All right, I guess it does three things. It lets you see if the coast is clear, it increases the power of Cabal Therapy, and it builds Threshold and Storm Count. The third category being the least important there. The Channel Fireball article said many things. I think that article was written quickly. I believe that Ant is only taking a very marginal loss here. Ramen Lover, I'm going to talk about those sorts of decks right here. So I think Ant takes minimal losses. I think they add like 2 Preordains, 1 more discard spell, and I don't know what that third card is going to be. It might be another cantrip, it might be another ritual or something like that. I don't know the deck list well enough, but I think Ant just like changes a couple cards and says, yep, that's good enough, this is fine. I still think Ant is going to be a very viable deck choice. I'm not too worried about Ant disappearing or anything like that. I think that anyone who believes that like Ant is just gone is sorely mistaken. I still expect Ant to be very good. I'll talk about Tets later. So, Elves. Elves is going to be fine. Elves is still probably going to be good. Julian is already testing, so all you Elves players out there in my chat, for some reason, that's okay. Just kidding. I love you Elves players, except when you get paired against me. Anyway, so Elves loses the ability to repeatedly activate Deathrite Shaman. In some way, Elves at times abused Deathrite Shaman more than other decks because like you get all of these untapping abilities in the Elves deck. So like honestly, there's some times where you can activate a Deathrite Shaman 4 times in a turn and just gain a silly amount of life or do a surprising amount of damage, especially like when you have like a Birchlow Rangers to actually make the colored manas that you need. So I don't think Elves is going anywhere. Like you can just like replace the Deathrites with like an Elvish Mystic, a Llanowar Elves, a Fendhorn Elves, and some other card of your choice, and be fine. Although some of Julian's lists from last night indicate that he has some ideas of his own. I didn't have time to watch those videos, unfortunately. I really want to, because I saw he was doing some cool things. Like he had a Mortar Pod in his list, and that was like super sweet. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of Julian's content later. Yes, THJ, that is a very good point. Deathrite Shaman was one of the few elves that actually had 2 toughness. Like you get that and the Nettle Sentinels, and most of the other stuff's 1/1s. So that was a boon for other decks trying to hate on elves. But elves is gonna be fine. It's like elves is tiny loser, just like Ant is. So then there's Turbo Depths. I expect there to be more Swords to Plowshares in the format than there has been in quite a while. And so Swords to Plowshares is pretty darn good against a Merit Lodge. So I think Turbo Depths is going to take a hit. Maybe not a huge hit, but I do expect this deck to fall out of favor a bit. Like, both between there being more Swords to Plowshares in the format and being more Wastelands in the format, I think that's going to be a bad combo for Turbo Depths. And Slow Depths is probably dead. It had its moment in the sun, but without Deathrite Shaman like as the glue to hold that deck together, like it was the life gain, it was the mana acceleration, it was the alternate win condition. I think without that, Slow Depths is just a poor choice. All right, so now we get to the big losers. Czech Pile in its current form is just dead. Unquestionably dead in its current form. Deathrite Shaman was the card that made that deck work. Oh, God. All right, chat wants to talk about Burn. I give. We'll talk about Burn. So, Deathrite Shaman held that deck together. Deathrite Shaman made that deck work. The jump from 1 to 3 mana was super important for early Culligan's Command. The ability to, like, fetch a swamp, play Deathrite Shaman on 1, play an island on 2, and him to Turok. Like, that sort of thing was just absolutely ridiculous. And, like, they're losing their Accelerator and a primary win condition and a primary stabilizing piece. Like, Pile will have to vastly change in order to go and keep up with the new decks that are going to arise. I don't think the general strategy that Pile is going for is going to die. I think it is just going to have to change forms. Similarly, Grixis Delver is probably not dead, but I expect it to be displaced by Rogue Delver. Grixis Delver is losing 2 incredibly important cards for multiple reasons. You can change the threat base of Grixis Delver, and probably still make it work. So, like, just to throw some ideas out there, I think that if you want to play Grixis Delver moving forward, you have to go probably in one of 2 directions. One, and this is the direction I think it'll go, you go more heavily on the Delve threats. Maybe even to the point of just playing Thoughtscour. So I could see Grixis Delver being on the Turbo Gurmag Angler plan. I could even see it going so far as playing Bedlam Reveler and going a bit heavier on red and playing a bit more burn, where, like, we even see, like, a Chain Lightning or a Fork Bolt regularly in the main deck, just as, like, cards that you can empty out from the hand more quickly. The other route I think it can go is just, like, try to find some new annoying way to attack the format from a weird, difficult-to-remove angle. I've seen some people talk about Death Shadow as a way to do that, but Probe was one of the better enablers for Death Shadow, so you're stuck, like, playing, like, Shocklands, Fetches, Thoughtseize, Dismember, and I feel like that's going to be a bit of a risky strategy moving forward. So Rohan, I'm moving left to right across the top row, so I've already talked about my winners, and I'm working through the big losers right now. So, Grixis Delver is probably not 100% dead, but it's probably going to be awkward. It's going to be, like, unquestionably worse than it used to be, but that doesn't mean it's gone. Like, some of the cards get way worse. Like, Young Pyromancer is notably worse without Probe around. Like, both because, like, you can't just tap out for Pyromancer on 2 and make a token, so even if your opponent has a removal spell, you still get some value out of it. And, like, losing Probe means, like, Cabal Therapy Young Pyromancer combo is a little worse than it used to be. So, that's no good here. Miracles is a big winner in my mind because control players are going to gravitate towards Miracles now that check pile's gone, and basics are going to be very strong in a new Wasteland-dominated format. Alright, so I think some of the biggest losers in the new format are actually the fringe decks. And I wrote some examples for myself here. So there were a lot of fringe 2 and 3 decks that were stapled together by Deathrite Shaman. Those decks take a real beating. And I think that's going to be hard. Like, some of the, like, bug mid-rangey decks that didn't see a lot of play, the things like a Lurin or Food Chain or some of the, like, Deathblade type decks, those decks that, like, Deathrite Shaman helped to accelerate out, they're taking a pretty big hit. Like, take Food Chain, for example. So, like, one of the cool things you could do with Deathrite in Food Chain was, like, oh, my Griffin died or got countered, now I'll just eat it with Deathrite Shaman and send it back into exile, and then, like, these threats are just, like, never-ending. And that's lost, or you have to, like, go about it in a different way, like using Gurmag Angler to delve it out, using a Scavenging Ooze to get it out. Those decks just lose out a little bit. Beagle, that's a good question. Do you see a large rise in True Name Nemesis coming up? I think we're going to get a net wash of True Name Nemesis, because, like, one of the things that made True Name obnoxiously good was just accelerating it out with Deathrite Shaman. Like, True Name Nemesis on turn 2 is, like, exponentially scarier than True Name Nemesis on turn 3. So, like, Stoneblade will probably get better, but seeing fewer turn 2 True Names is going to warm my cold dead heart, basically. TG Hondo. Yes. It is just suboptimal to not play a split of those. Just unquestionably suboptimal. So, like, why would I not do that? Like, I do not want them to blind hit with a predict when they're in a bind. In the times where they are blind predict targeting you, like, they are in trouble, and I don't want to dig them out of that spot with variants. We're not going to have to worry too much about Rogue Delver. Historically speaking, Rogue Delver has been, like, literally a 75% or above matchup. Like, it's close to a buy for DNC. It's really good. Alright, so I had some other fringe decks I want to talk about. To the one Doomsday player out there, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. You poor person, you got it from the top ban, and then you got it from the probe ban. That's rough. I would say Doomsday is dead again, and absolutely unplayable again, but those Doomsday players, they'll try to prove me wrong, and they'll still try to make it work somehow. Saint Satan. Alright. 10-second recap. Reanimator decks of various natures are going to be very good choices moving forward, but because Graveyard Hate is going to increase, it's not going to be as much of a net positive as I think a lot of people imagine it will be. I think the Reanimator decks will start out as black-red, just so people don't have to make a lot of changes. but I would not be surprised to see some degree of return to blue-black depending on how the format shapes up. Yeah, game 1% for decks like Reanimator and Dredge skyrockets. Yeah. And there was another one. Oh, yeah. So another loser is any sort of fringe deck that was built around Young Pyromancer or Monastery Mentor and Probe. So, like, every once in a while you saw some of those, like, Esper, like, Mentor decks. Without Probe, those take a pretty big hit. But those were already kind of fringe to begin with, so it's whatever. There's one other deck that I want to highlight, and that's Red Prison. I'm not sure what happens to this deck. And I say this as someone who has played a lot of Red Prison. And I want to explain why I'm so unsure about the future of this deck. Mana Denial is going to be very good in this format. Wasteland is probably going to be the best way to do it. And that means that in turn, more basic heavy decks are going to appear a lot. D&T and Miracles are both difficult matchups for Red Prison. So that's not good. But at the same time, against a lot of these other decks, the powerful lock pieces might shut them out. You know, decks like Delver and Lands and Eldrazi and whatever 3-colored decks still exist in the format, a Moon is still going to be great against them. The bridges are going to be awesome against like Reanimator and Rogue Delver. So it's very possible that Red Prison might do okay. Like, Deathrite Shaman was one of the better cards against Blood Moon in some ways, because it meant that some decks could, like, fetch a Swamp and a Deathrite and, like, get 1 or 2 lands in the graveyard before, like, the Moon or whatever came down, and then have a way to answer that Moon with the Deathrite Shaman, and that's gone. So, like, if you want to beat that Moon, you win that die roll and you fetch a basic early, and happen to also know that you're playing against Red Prison. So, Ninjutsu Kid, Steel Stompy probably is in the same category as Eldrazi is overall. So, I don't really know where Red Prison falls. I think the sideboard of Red Prison matters a lot. Because you need to have the right mix of cards to bring in and out in order to go and... How do I say this? The Red Prison deck has a lot of cards that are bad in various situations, and you need to be able to bring those out properly and bring in powerful hate cards. And Red Prison also might need to play more than, like, the 4-ish pieces of graveyard hate they're playing right now. Like, in fact, like, my current Red Prison list doesn't run any graveyard hate. So I don't know where that means Red Prison falls overall. I think it's at least a slight loser, but I'm very willing to accept that I'm wrong. Beagle, Red Prison is a Chalice of the Void deck. That is why. And Min, I don't know if you were here earlier, but my neutral category, what I meant by that was these are good decks to go and pick up and play while making minimal changes to the deck. I think these are very safe, good choices for, like, week 1 and 2 Legacy metagame. That's kind of what I mean by neutral there. Like, these are fine, strong choices. But they don't necessarily, like, objectively immediately benefit from some of the bannings. I didn't know how to, like, phrase that better, because, like, it's not really an immediate winner because of the bannings like many of these other cards are, but that's kind of where I'm going. No, so we'll be transitioning to like my expected metagame and the chat requests next. So this is what's coming here. So Gooby, Containment Priest is not in my my deck list that I'm going to be trying out immediately, but I could see it being okay. All right, I'm talking a lot. I need to refill my water bottle. I'll be back in about a minute. All right. So now let's go on to like what decks I'm expecting. Some of this is just kind of like logical conclusions from what I believe like the big winners and losers are, but a few probably deserve some discussion. So I think like D&T and Miracles are obviously going to be pretty good. I'm mostly here for the memes. There's been some good ones floating around. I wish I would have pulled a few up in advance that I've been sent in the past 24 hours. So I think like D&T and Miracles, all right, those are pretty clear winners, right? Basic heavy decks that are going to be good, solid control decks once they're tuned. So Reanimator is going to be very popular at first. I think a lot of, how do I say this? I think a lot of legacy players who are looking to pick up a powerful deck in the first few weeks of the format are going to levitate and gravitate towards Reanimator as an option, even though like it's obvious that deck's going to be good, so people are going to be ready for it and have plans for it. You should still expect to see a ton of that. Bear with Two Guns, I'm glad you're excited about this Brave New World, and thank you for the bits. So, I think that like these two neutral decks right here, like Eldrazi and Show and Tell, I think like those are going to be popular strategies at first. I expect to see quite a bit of Eldrazi, just like it's a nice, safe, linear deck. I think Show and Tell is going to be a good deck to pick up. It's really going to be a function of like, is Show and Tell going to be like the best other combo deck? And I don't know if that's the case. I expect that some fast combo deck is going to be really good, but I don't know if it's Show and Tell or not. I wonder if like Storm or sorry, I should say, I wonder if Tess specifically is going to be very good, because like Tess is fast. It's not really going to take much of a hit. It's very powerful, and goblins are annoying. So like I wonder if Tess can be good right now. Just like turbo out, go fast. You don't really care about the graveyard very much, so you can like dodge a lot of the combo hate that people are going to be playing. So like I think some fast combo deck that is not reliant on the graveyard is going to be very good. I don't know which deck that is. Like it's just gonna kind of depend on how things shake up, but some fast non-graveyard combo deck is going to be good. So Captain Hammer, I don't know how much Belcher cares about Probe. Like I am not a Belcher player. I cannot tell you how much Probe matters. Like it is deck thinning and information. I don't know like how much of a hit that is for them. Like I've goldfished a few games with Belcher. I've played it at a kitchen table. That's about as far as my experience with Belcher goes. So Street Wraith would thin the deck, but it doesn't have any function, right? So I wonder, like, that's probably just not good. And now I want to talk about this last category. And this is kind of a big wild card for me because I don't know what this is going to look like. There is going to be some 3-color, value-oriented, attrition-based deck in this format. There always has been. I don't know... Oh, Bear with 2 guns. Yeah, increasing the count of Manamorphose is really a good filler for Belcher. Yeah, that's a good point. So continuing on, there's going to be some value-oriented 3-color deck, and I don't know what it's going to be. Yeah, man, like, there's... Yeah, like, there was Blade, there was Shardless Bug, there was Pile. Like, there was so much Esper Stoneblade running around, like, pre-Deathray Shaman. So the question is, what card is going to be most valuable in the new format? Is it Leovold? So we want to play Bug? Is it Grixis and Kess becomes viable? Is it like Culligan's Command and we want to stay in Grixis for that? Oh, wow. Blue-Black Reanimator for 7 years. Wow. So I don't know what this deck is going to be. Okay, so NBA, to clarify, what I really mean by this is a blue deck. Because I think the like Maverick Loam style decks, like there will be a mid-range deck like that, but I think there will be some mid-range blue deck. So I don't know if you like try to play Shardless Bug without Deathrite. I don't know if you try to play like a mid-range Grixis control deck, somewhat akin to like, the Grixis Pyromancer deck. I don't know if you play like a Grixis control deck with like Gurmags or Tassigurs as finishers. I'm not sure where that goes. There's... Alright, to just kind of talk about this here, there's some chance that, because like Stoneforge Mystic and equipment is going to be a little safer with not as much Culligan's Command running around, there's some chance that this 3-color deck probably becomes a Stoneblade deck, but I'm not sure exactly. So, Bear with 2 guns, it's possible you could play something like Reduke's deck from like GP Louisville that had like hierarchs and accelerated like hierarchs into like Stoneforge and True Names. Like that's I can see what you're going with there. All right, so when I build deck lists, this is the set of things that I'm going to be considering in constructing my deck lists. More on that in a minute. So to talk about some things the chat wanted to talk about, let's talk about Blue-Red Delver. I've never loved Blue-Red Delver as a deck, but I think the question you have to ask is, will Blue-Red Delver be better than Rug Delver at attacking the format? Sorry, I can't read that name. Whoever, your name ends in 83. Like some sort of Shardless Bug deck or some sort of Visions deck could fall into here. Like, but losing Deathrite as an accelerator into that stuff is pretty big. So sorry, back to this. If you want to play Blue-Red Delver, I think you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing going to be better than what Rug Delver is doing? So I don't know that it will. Yeah, so sorry, I'm sitting like way further away from my monitor than usual because my PC tower doesn't fit under this college desk that I'm at, because for some ungodly reason that they have like a beam going across the middle of the desk that is completely unrequired as a support because this desk is like 3 feet tall. But that's another thing. So like, I could see Blue-Red Delver being okay because it's like, it's fast, it's aggressive, you can play a lot of one-drop threats. I could see Bedlam Reveler being pretty good, like just fire bolts and chain lightnings at face and then reload, or just like play a bunch of cheap disruptive spells and then reload with Revelers. I could see it working. Yeah, so Cannon Fairy, I was teaching a class, and I had taught 2 of my 3 classes, and I went to check my phone in between classes, and I have like 60 messages, and I just like, oh my god, what happened? Did it happen? And so like I just looked at it immediately, and I made some happy noises. I had a couple of students look at me funny. Alright, and then somebody in the chat asked about Burn. Many somebodies asked about Burn. It's Burn, guys. It's Burn. It's probably never going to be one of the best decks of the format, but it will always be a great budget deck and a viable option when things get really greedy. But again, if we expect a lot of DNT and Miracles, that can be tricky. And it's not like Reanimator is a great matchup either, based on my understanding, right? Like, it's just really hard to beat a Grizzlebrand if that gets into play. So I'm not convinced that Burn is a good place to be. Yeah, so no more Deathrite Shaman around being random life gain. That's good for Burn, but like the decks that are probably going to come around are not going to be great for Burn. Probably. Pox hasn't been a viable deck choice ever. Like, sorry if it's your pet deck, but like it's not a tier 1 deck. It's not even a tier 2 deck. It's not in consideration in the format, seriously. Yeah, but does the average Burn player beat the average Miracle player? I don't know. My guess is no. Infect. Infect. probably gets a slight uptick. Like, Pile and Delver were running a relatively large amount of disruption and attacked, but sorry. Pile and Delver played a lot of removal and a lot of ways that could attack from various angles to kind of bully on Infect a little bit. So Infect probably gets slightly better, but I don't have a ton of experience playing Infect, so I don't want to comment too much about that. I very much could be wrong. TG Hondo, thank you very much for subscribing. I appreciate your support. All right, so that's kind of what I have to say about the metagame. Yeah, sure. My thoughts on Stoneblade are essentially that it's probably going to be a fine deck choice. Like, Stone... Oh, wait, did I... I kind of skipped over it, didn't I? All right, let's talk about Stoneblade some more, and then I'll talk about my D&T deck list. Cephalid Breakfast is better, too. Yeah, but how is Cephalid Breakfast's Pox matchup? Alright, so, Stoneblade will probably be better than it's been in the past 6 months pretty easily. Like, with less K-Command running around, it's better to rely on equipment than it used to be. And True Name is pretty good. Whereas most of the other most of the other True Name decks were also Deathrite decks. So Stoneblade will probably get to be one of the better True Name decks that's running around in the format. I don't know that, like, Stoneblade will displace Miracles, though, because, like, kind of once Miracles came on the scene and became strong, it tended to outperform Stoneblade, so a lot of the players who would play Stoneblade just played Miracles instead. But we'll see how that shakes out now. Yes, Goblins will probably get slightly better due to Deathrite being gone and due to getting Goblin Trashmaster. Okay. So I would be happy to try some blue-white Stoneblade with Back to Basics and True Name again on stream, and I will actually do that because somebody already donated for that. So I actually have three donation deck lists queued up, just as an aside. I have 2 blue-white Stoneblade streams queued up, and then a D&T stream queued up for donations. But what about Shaheen Sarani being able to play his Esper Stoneblade list from 6 years ago? Well, he's probably just going to be unbeatable, right? We can just accept that and move on. All right. So let's talk about where D&T goes now. Can I make this font bigger? Can't make this format. No. Font. Yes. All right. That was maybe too big. Hey, that's perfect. I think Brightling comes out on the 6th, I believe. So we're right there. Yes, it releases with the M19 stuff. So simultaneously, we will get both Remorseful Cleric and Brightling, and so we get fun toys in a new format. So it's like double exciting. Mikey, I'm doing pretty well. I'm currently at Latin Academy. This is the Greek teacher's morning to teach, so I have the morning off, and it's super exciting because I get to talk about Legacy. So let's kind of talk about this in 2 parts. Let's talk about this in terms of the main deck, and let's talk about this in terms of the sideboard. Oh wait, is it tomorrow? Or wait, is it the 6th that the changes go in place on Moto? Or is it just, like, both happen tomorrow? Because if both happen tomorrow, Thursday. What day is today? I have no idea. 5th. Okay. Okay, 5th after the downtime, so maybe effectively the 6th for my purposes. Okay, cool. All right, so in terms of the main deck, what probably needs to change? Right now, like, the immediate answer is some main deck graveyard hate that's incidental is probably really good. So, Remorseful Cleric fills, I think, two important roles. Actually, let's say 3. Hey, Arkin. 1. On its own, it is an aggressive 2/1 flyer that comes down on turn 2. That's great. 2. It goes and trades with Delver, which is going to matter a lot in the format. And 3, it's also main deckable graveyard hate that isn't just dead against the non-graveyard-based decks. And this is like one of those cards where, like, if someone points a removal spell at it, you get to just like nuke a graveyard on the way out, and that's not irrelevant. Yeah, Lord Darkview, I'll talk about that. I understand your skepticism there. So, Remorseful Cleric, I think, needs to be in the deck, in the main deck, as either a 1 or a 2 of. I think 2's probably fine. A little unclear there. Next, we need to talk about the remaining 3 to 4 flex slots. I still want 1 Mirran Crusader in the deck, just because it's going to be really good against the random 3-color decks. It's going to be really good against Rug Delver. It's just going to be a good card to have, and it carries equipment well. And then Brightling. I should really just stop referring to that as a flex slot, because it's not. Brightling is absolutely insane. You need to be playing that card. Unless the metagame shifts drastically more than I think it is going to, and it will probably shift quite a bit, but unless it gets like real weird, Brightling is just an auto-include. It's so powerful. Yes, Basic Planes. In all likelihood, by the time I get to the Nick Fit streams, we will have Arena Rector, so I can play some really weird stuff. All right. And just to preempt this question before someone asks, no, I'm not taking the Batterskull out of the deck. If we're expecting a lot of Rug Delver, Batterskull's stupid good. Stupid good. So, I think something approximating this package is going to be strong, because you have a decent mix of good hate cards that are generic in the terms of like Remorseful Cleric and Revoker and Thalia. You have some strong finishers in Brightling and Mirran Crusader, and then you just have the rest of the core cards. I don't really think I want Serra Avenger over like the Brightling or the Mirran Crusader, and I don't know that I can find room for Serra Avengers in this deck list and still get everything else that I'm looking for. Mikey, yes. Rug Delver will play some sort of a Braid or Ancient Grudge in the sideboard, but like Batterskull is like a free, like game 1 free roll against Rug. Eric, is Isolate that 1 mana card that like exiles a 1-drop? If so, basically it's not good because Path to Exile tends to hit most of the targets that we want to hit anyway. Yeah, I saw Moxall's post. There was a lot. I was going to test similar lists to like see if that was true, but like I don't think in the post-ban world it's correct to start with cutting Batterskull, but I might get to cutting Batterskull. But like level 1, I don't want to cut Batterskull. All right. In playing Brightling in the deck list, I think it's probably going to be correct to just continue to run the 24th land. I really liked that a lot. All right, now let's look at the sideboard. Let me rearrange this a bit. Okay. So 1. I think that 4 pieces of Graveyard Hate with 2 more in the main deck, as well as 3 recruiters to find those clerics, that might be enough to call the Graveyard Hate good there. Static Grip, if I don't answer that question after I talk about the sideboard, remind me. So I think 6 pieces of Graveyard Hate in the deck is appropriate given what I'm expecting. And I think that'll be okay. I don't know that I want to run any more than that, but the sideboard is going to be more flexible than it has been in previous months, I think. I don't think Storm's dead. I don't think Elves are dead, so I still want to have these Canonists here. In the past 2 months or so, I've always been on 3 Path to Exiles. I think for a little while we can go down to 2, because like against Rug Delver, you're going to want to side 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Paths, 2 Council's Judgments, and maybe this other Brightling here. And that's plenty of cards to bring in, so I don't think I need more removal here, and I think I'd just be like creating empty slots for my sideboard. Council's Judgment is a good generic catch-all. It's going to answer the Planeswalkers and Miracles. It's going to answer opposing equipment in the mirror, which is going to be important. And then I get to a bunch of one-ofs, and I'm going to be frank with you here. This is my starting point. And I want to just, like, highlight this quote from Julian again. Just, like, get out there, play games. Don't spend too much time theory crafting. Just, like, get out there, play games, figure out what went wrong, and adjust. So this is my starting point for the remainder of the sideboard. And I think this is the unquestionable portion of the sideboard that you absolutely want. And everything below that is, well, maybe this is about right. Okay. So, essentially, I've really enjoyed Relic Warder over the past couple of months as a way to go and, like, fight the mirror and random decks. It's been really good against Red Prison in particular. So I think I'm okay with keeping this in here to start with, but this may not stay. If you wanted to play 1 more piece of Graveyard Hate, you'd play a Containment Priest. I don't know if we do. Like, Containment Priest could easily fit into one of these remaining slots here. Like, Relic Warder and Sword of War and Peace are both cards that are pretty great in the mirror. And it's just going to be, like, the question of, like, do I need both of those, depending on where the metagame's going. Yes, Leona Relic Warder is unquestionably better than Disenchant. I think anyone who plays Disenchant in D&T is largely just wrong. I understand that it is flexibility. I understand that there is value to, like, playing a card that isn't stock because, like, it gets people. But, like, the ability to have 2 to 3 tutors for your Disenchant effect is not to be underestimated. Like, in the mirror, when you just, like, top deck a Recruiter and you can, like, Recruiter and go get that Relic Warder, it's huge. So many times. Like, especially if we're only playing 2 Revokers, then just having that in the deck as a 3rd target is super important. So, next we get to this Prelate. In a world where there's going to be some combo decks running around, but you're not really quite sure what combo deck it is, Prelate is a nice catch-all. So, no, I don't. All right, let's talk about splashing in a minute. So, Prelate is a nice catch-all. I couldn't find room to put it in the main deck, and I don't know whether or not I'd want to right now, but I kind of want it in the 75 somewhere until I have a better feel for where the format is going. So these final 3 cards are kind of the cards that I'm playing because they're good against miracles. And I'm opting to play these cards over things like Gideon and Cataclysm because they're more flexible and less narrow. So, like, Gideon and Cataclysm are fine cards, but they're a little more specific. Like, if I play a Brightling, it's awesome against any control deck, it's awesome against any aggro deck, and it's a fine card to sub in when some of your main deck cards are just kind of bad. So, like, that's good. Recruiter gets more of your bullets where they matter, and that's going to be really important in this format. And Sword of War and Peace is awesome against Miracles in the Mirror. So, in an unknown format, rather than more narrow but more powerful options, I'm building my sideboard with flexibility in mind, more so than anything else. So there's a good question I missed from a minute ago just to answer that. Somebody asked, is Remorseful Cleric really better than Containment Priest? And the answer is no. But Remorseful Cleric is strong and main deckable. So even when it's bad, it is still just an aggressive 2/1 flyer. And that's why it's in the deck list. It is main deckable hate that is still good when it's bad. So let's kind of talk about some of the weaknesses of this sideboard plan. This sideboard plan does not have some of the same like game-ending cards that my previous version of Mono White D&T had. Like without Cataclysms, like you lose the game over button against some decks like say Big Eldrazi. So we'll see what that does to my percentages across the board. This is also a little softer to some other aggro decks in ways, like I'm down a Path to Exile, and that's not irrelevant. But I feel pretty good about this deck list as a starting point, and I want to emphasize that starting point. This format is going to be all about refining over the next couple of weeks. If you are looking for a time to like experiment and try things out, try out ideas that you've had in the past, this is a really good time to try new ideas. Okay, so somebody asked about splashing. Do we want to splash right now? I think the answer is probably not initially, because I just think a solid Brightling heavy build with probably 2 to 3 Brightlings in the 75 with lots of basics and with just like good solid stuff is going to be a great place to start. Normally, if you're splashing in D&T, you're splashing because you believe a certain effect is so powerful that it is worth taking those risks. And I think, yeah, and I'm coming full circle there, Static Rip. I think that filling your mana base with things like caverns is going to be risky right now. Because like all the wastelands are going to come out of the woodworks. You know, you're going to see them in Rug Delver, you're going to see them in the Mirror, you're going to see them in Maverick, you're going to see them in Loam, you're going to see them in Lands. I think there's just going to be a lot of wasteland. So I value stability over everything else. Now, do we want to play Cavern for Miracles? I think the answer is no. Because Brightling is not a human. And Brightling is the card that you would want to make uncounterable. Just because in the long game, like, Brightling is so annoying. That card is so incredibly powerful against Miracles that, like, that is the card you would want to make uncounterable. So if you're playing a Cavern of Souls, you're playing a Cavern of Souls for 3 cards in your deck. I don't think I like that. I thought Lands was a small winner because, like, Deathrite Shaman is gone, so some of the, like, incidental hate on their deck is gone. It's not a large winner. Some people in the chat are actually suggesting that some of Land's better matchups are going to disappear, so I think it is only a slight winner. Alright, so that is what I have to say about the format. Essentially, from here on out, like, as soon as I can get my hands on Brightling and that Cleric, I'm just going to be playing D&T. And that is 90% of what is going to be on my channel prior to the Grand Prix at the end of what is that? End of August, beginning of September. I have a lot of testing to do. Like the format is new. It's very exciting. It's very cool. I need to jam games. Yeah. I got command for that. So at this point, I would like to take any questions from the chat. If you have any questions, if you want to hear my thoughts about something in the format, I am happy to say it. But I have said my piece about the format, and it's time to jam games. But I can't do that yet because cards aren't on Moto. While I'm waiting for some chat questions to catch up, I just want to say, like, I'm so excited for this format now. We're gonna see some really cool things in the next couple of weeks, and I'm very happy about that. Okay. Do I think Standstill is a winner here? I think Standstill might require too much tuning to be an initial winner. Like it's a deck that like attacks from a very specific angle, and if that angle isn't right, I think the deck performs poorly. So I don't think Standstill is an immediate winner. How many games do you jam before you're satisfied with the data? As many as I can. I'd say like once you have 50 matches under your belt, I think that's when you can start looking at some data and you can start to see a pattern. But I start to get more comfortable, when we start getting into like, oh, I have 100 matches now. That starts to feel good for me. Mono White D&T stream this weekend, most certainly. Why no prelate in the main? I couldn't find room. I think the main deck is getting super, super tight, and I need Brightling in the main deck. And like if I wanted to fit in prelate, I would only play one Remorseful Cleric, and then I'd remove one, like put one Containment Priest in the sideboard. What do you think about the Reanimator Domination now, when it's already the best Moto deck? To clarify, E.W. Landon is an amazing player, and I think like what he has done with Reanimator is super, super impressive. He really, really, really knows his stuff. I never felt like Black-Red Reanimator was oppressive by any means, and I think now that like people are going to actively prepare for Reanimator, it will be slightly better than it was in like a clear tier 1 deck, but I think it'll be kept in check. What 3-color Blade deck do you think will be the best starting point? I'd just start with blue-white, honestly. I'd start with blue-white, jam those games, and see how that goes. What's a better Reanimator? I think people are going to start with black-red, but I think there will be experimentation with blue-black, and it's really hard to just make that prediction. Reanimator of some nature is going to be insane. I think people start by starting with black-red, though. Yeah, 12-post decks probably aren't going to be super well positioned. Do you expect decks to be similar to pre-Gitaxian Probe stuff? Partially. I think some of those decks that have been oppressed for a while are going to come back, because they've been oppressed like both by Miracle and by Grixis Delver / Pile. Will Goblin Chain Whirler still be good in a post-Pile Delver world? Yeah, probably. That card's stupid. It's so good against D&T. It's so, like, if people are still playing threats like Strix and Young Pyromancer in some capacity, like, that's just still going to be great. Yeah, I'm going to try other things in the board that can fight Miracles rather than Cataclysm because they're more generic. What about dropping a Stoneforge Mystic and a Batterskull for another main deck Brightling? I want to start by having Batterskull in the deck because I expect Rug. What do you think about no one bans in Legacy? I am super happy with the ban and restricted announcement. Do we shift our sideboard at all based on expecting black-red or blue-black? Probably not. We still probably play about the same thing. Like, there's going to be a personal preference on whether you play, like, Surgical or Fairy, but other than that, you're playing generic graveyard hate cards, so you don't have a ton of choice there. Is Remorseful Cleric the real deal? Well, I haven't play-tested with it yet, but I expect it to be good. I expect to probably want one in the main deck, at least. And we'll kind of go from there. Whew. That was a lot of queued up questions. You think Goblin is going to be tier 1? No. But I think it's going to be better. Like, I think the combination of Deathrite Shaman leaving the format and getting Goblin Trashmaster is probably enough to, like, push Goblins onto the scene rather than being a deck you play against very rarely. I don't think initially we make any plans to fight Goblins differently from how we've been doing so in the past. If Goblins becomes popular, we'll talk. But I think that's a bridge we cross when we get to it, not something that we think that far ahead about. Again, this is a starting point. You know, I'm going to take this and I'm going to jam games with it, and then I'm going to change things as we kind of see what people are actually playing. Infect is probably good. I have not played very much Infect, though, so I'll defer that judgment to someone who knows better. Thoughts on Loam Pox? Pox isn't a viable strategy. I am not a big believer in Pox. I played that one black-green, like, Pox Bantu's Last Reckoning stream, and that was fun, but, like, as we saw there, maybe not the best cards. So Loam, I lump into this green mid-range category. And any of, like, green Wasteland deck that can recur the Wastelands with, like, Loam or Knight or Ramunap Excavator is probably a slight winner in this format. Do you think there will be less spot removal in the format for the time being? No, I think the spot removal will, like, decrease slightly and maybe change its nature, but we're still going to see a decent amount of removal in the format. I don't think we're going to go back to, like, 2014, where, like, it was just like, oh, there's 4 Lightning Bolts or 4 Swords to Plowshares in your deck, and that was all the removal. I don't think we're ever going back to that now. Where do you think your mono black list falls? I think I'm going to have to table that one for the time being. You know, it really attacked the format well, and, you know, format's changing now, so we might need to put that one on the shelf for a little while. Gamers Champ, if you go to any legacy database and search Bantu's Last Reckoning, it's the only one. I don't think you want to play Shalai in D&T right now. I think focusing on Brightling is probably going to be more important, and Shalai might be a little slow for the format until we see how it shakes up. So what do I think the tier 1 decks will be? This is my, not necessarily tier 1, but this is what I'm expecting to play against when I'm building decks. Is everyone calling for the rise of D&T? How do you combat the rise of Massacre and Dread of Night? Once I start seeing that stuff, that's when I start considering playing, like, more main deck Brightlings that are fat, and like a cut down on Cleric, or I start considering either, like, Benelish Marshall or Gideon in the sideboard. Yes, also, literally setting fire to your opponent's Dread of Nights will probably answer that card in the short term. It might create long-term problems, though. Let me look at Brightling for a moment. I don't believe that is correct. Oh wait, I have it pulled up here. I thought shapeshifter was a type. You're thinking of changeling. So it's changeling, and I think that was a keyword ability. I think if it was a changeling, you got all creature types. Okay, chat confirms. Yeah, yeah. If Brightling was a human, or if Brightling could be like, had a shared creature type with a bunch of stuff in the deck, Cavern of Souls would be an entirely different conversation then. Alright, so you own Grixis, Delver, and Checkpile, and lands. So should I just switch to Rug or play lands? I would say, for the first couple of weeks, play whichever one you enjoy the most. And then after about 2 weeks, when we're starting to collect some real data and see how things go, then I think you make that decision. I wouldn't go out and buy a whole bunch of paper cards right now. Things are going to be really up in the air for a little while. I would defer any large purchases of cardboard. 50% gaming. I would buy some Brightlings. I would think it would be wise to own those cards. I don't think they're going to get reprinted a ton, right? It's a very powerful card, probably too powerful for standard. So it would have to be reprinted in all sorts of side sets, and we just got it. So it's probably a good idea to buy some copies of that card. Yeah, the human count is ticking down more and more. Like with Brightling in the deck, Remorseful Cleric in the deck, like we have Moms, Thalia's Recruiter's Mirroring Crusader, so that's 11, right? 4, 8, 9, 10, yeah, 11 humans. At least in my shell here. We're becoming a less good Cavern of Souls deck. Oh, man. Brightling up a whole $1. Get them while they're hot. No, but really, like, if Brightlings are $5 or $6, it's probably a good idea to just, like, get them now before, like, they randomly spike or something like that, and they jump up to, like, 15. Like, there's... Like, if it becomes the D&T staple that I expect it to become, it's going to be one of those things that's just good to own. Whole Dollarino, yep. No, I didn't have time to read that article. Was he the one who like said, well, I was testing Pile for the Pro Tour, and then this happened, so like I guess I'll just publish this giant manifesto on like Pile and all my data and testing. So yeah, that was sad. There are a lot of people who were doing prep for either like the upcoming Grand Prix or the Pro Tour that are going to be real behind where they want to be right now. Yeah, I'm going to try to read that post later. Without Cavern, what's the best play pattern to stick your Brightlings through a wall of counters? I mean, Jimmy, you kind of have to get a feel, and like you have to try to resolve it at a point where you think it matters. Like a Vial in the early game just like negates having to do that. But otherwise, like if you stick a piece of equipment on the board, you can just like play out literally any idiot and exhaust your opponent's resources. And then once the resources are gone, and they're like hellbent or close to it, then you can go for the Brightling. All right, chat. What other questions do you have? What other things do you want to talk about? I've exhausted everything that I have to say, but I'm willing to entertain some questions. You've been Pro Tour testing for Moon Stumpy, yeah. I mean, yeah. I had put a lot of work into the Red Prison archetype, with like the potential like consideration to seriously playing that deck if I felt D&T was poorly positioned, and that's out the window now. Aelus Tin Fins like falls into this same like Reanimator Dredge category where it's a slight winner, but it will probably be kept in check by the various graveyard hate that occurs. Depending on like where Tin Fins kind of ends up falling, I could see it like being a viable deck, but like losing Probe is not nothing there, because like Probe is a card that loses you life, and then you can gain that life back with Children of Corliss. So like losing Probe is a non-zero thing there, both for like the Cabal therapy reasons and the life loss. Sifali, in my matchup guide, which will now slightly be outdated, there's a suggested number for Sanctum Prelate for every matchup. Mikey, Shardless might be viable without Deathrite Shaman, just as like a good value-oriented deck. That's unclear. Chat wants to see some Zombardment. I don't think anyone ever played Zombardment well other than Sam Black. Like, Sam Black just, like, came out, he just, like, walked into a tournament, just, like, threw zombies at people, and everyone died. And then everyone tried to replicate it, and they're like, how did you do that? And the answer was, I'm Sam Black. That's how I did it. And I'm convinced only Sam Black can play that deck. I've played around it with a little bit, but it always felt a little clunky. Super, super, super fun, but clunky. Are there any, like, pre-Deathrite Shaman, like, 2012 era decks that you'd like to see come back? I don't know. Like, I'd love to see some more, like, No Rug or something like that. Like, Natural Order for Progenitus decks. Those were always fun. But, you know, that's a whole nother discussion. No, this is the Theorycraft day. This is the only Theorycraft day, and then everything else after this will just be games. I will not be streaming today because Brightling and Remorseful Cleric aren't out, so any testing that I do is just, like, largely irrelevant. I would have to, like, test with a non-D&T deck. Do I think Natural Order has a place in Elves in this meta? Julian's list from last night did not have Natural Order, if I remember correctly. I will default to his logic. Hey, Phil, can you tell us if you think Brightling is good? Oh, Brightling. Oh, Brightling, yes. Is good. Are there any rogue decks you think that might have a chance? Bomberman or anything totally out there? In the first couple of weeks, any rogue linear combo deck that is not graveyard-oriented can have a fighting chance, I think. But long-term, probably not. We'll see. Turbo Depths is a loser because there's probably going to be more Swords to Plowshares and more Wastelands in the format. Is Brightling good? If so, why? Brightling does everything. It's just like an angry Swiss Army knife covered in bees. And you just throw it at the opponent. They're like, oh god, what do? I can't kill this thing. It's gaining 5 life a turn. It's hitting me for 5. I can't lightning bolt it because it just gets a bigger butt. Like, it's really difficult to answer. It's bigger than most of our other cards. It's annoying. It has relevant abilities. It's just awesome. It is good against every archetype. Like, it's good against combo decks because it can hit for 5 a turn. It's good against aggro decks because it can gain 5 a turn. It's good against control decks because it's impossible to kill. It's very mana intensive, and that's why we're not like running 4 or anything like that, but the card's great. Oh, sorry, Static Rift. I misread that. I just skimmed over your question. Does Natural Order have a place in non-elves list? I don't know. I guess that's a function of, like, is casting Natural Order to get a fatty better than reanimating a fatty? Maybe. Like, it's a combo approach that doesn't rely on the graveyard. That's a good place to be. But unfortunately, like, it is a combo approach that's going to get hit by things like Grafdigger's Cage or Containment Priest, right? So maybe not the best angle. Yeah, Lord Darkview, still in awe about the Hatfields playing that, like, Natural Order Temporal Mastery deck. That was awesome. Progenitus U for 20. All right, so I have a hard cutoff time of 11:15 for this stream, so I'm willing to entertain a few more minutes of questions if anyone has them. If anyone wants to bring up other decks or other cards or angles of attack that you might be good, I'm happy to share my thoughts. Natural Order is a good way for the mid-range value decks to go. I guess. Are you planning to play more Revoker mainboard? No. Until Revoker proves itself as a better card in the current metagame than it was in the previous metagame, I don't think that's correct. So, like, Revoker is a good generic answer, and it's a 2-drop. Those are both important things. But Remorseful Cleric as another 2-drop kind of makes my curve okay, while also being an okay hate card. So we'll see where Revoker goes. Like, it's great against D&T. It's pretty terrible against Miracles. It's okay against Reanimator. Bad against Eldrazi. Bad against this. Okay against some of this sort of stuff. Baleful Strix is still going to be a card that will probably have a home in the metagame, but I don't know what that home is right now. It's probably here. It's probably in some, like, 3-color Bug or Grixis deck that goes on a value plan. But there will probably be fewer Strix running around than previously. If there ever comes a day where we don't play Thalia, will you rename your website to Thraben Memorial University? I mean, maybe not rename it, but, like, maybe a commemorative plaque or something like that might be appropriate. How do I think Blue-Red Delver will benefit? Blue-Red Delver will probably be fine. Like, I can see Bedlam Reveler being a good, like, graveyard-based card to play that isn't, like, strong enough to warrant bringing graveyard hate against. Thalia Memorial Bench, I like that. Yeah, so, like, one of the things about, like, the Baleful Strix that was everywhere is that a lot of times those were in the Deathrite Shaman decks anyway, right? Like, in Pile or, like, the Bug Pile deck, like, they were just BFFs forever. So with one of those gone, the other might decrease a little bit. So Kogan, my deck list is here, as well as below the stream. Short version is that this is like, D&T is a big winner in the new format in all likelihood, and this probably paves the way for the glory that is Brightling. Arkin, you think Burn is a big winner. I don't have a very positive view of Burn, generally speaking. I will say that I don't think it is a big winner, but I would be happy to be proven wrong. Like, I love when Burn is a good deck, because that means that new players have an awesome, accessible way to enter the format. At some point, I will do some ThrabenU merchandise. I have another large side project cooking currently, so it might not happen right now, but sometime soon. sometime we'll get some ThrabenU merch. HG, we're probably not doing too much more here, so you probably won't miss much. I'd buy a Thraben University rapier. Yes. Yeah, that's why I removed soon from that statement. So sometime there will be ThrabenU merchandise. So I think I said that Lands was a slight winner with Deathrite Shaman gone, but like how it will fare as in terms of like other matchups, that is what needs to be determined. You know, that's why it's not over here or anything like that. Some people in chat were suggesting that many of Land's best matchups might disappear, so I may actually be wrong on that, but I feel Deathrite being gone is probably a net positive. Static Gripped, no, cannot give you any other hints on that, unfortunately, but it's going to be super sweet. That announcement will come soon, but like actual soon, probably within 2 weeks. Oh yeah, okay. You want to watch the first half? Yeah. It was a very good discussion. I'm very pleased with it. The chat had a lot of helpful things to say. It involves Red, Cedric Phillips, and ends with Aki. It's been unraveled. So we're in a brave new world. Legacy's going to be really open. There's going to be so much deck variation in the next few weeks. We're going to have like awesome data dumps from like the 5.0 deck lists. I think those are going to be really helpful in sort of like understanding where the format is going. And anyone who gets to play in some paper tournaments, you know, your results are going to matter a lot for shaping the initial metagame. So, my name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, a site exclusively for Legacy, Death, and Taxes. If you've enjoyed my content today, please consider following to push me closer and closer to a NickFit stream or two. And if you're really enjoying what I'm doing for the Legacy community, consider subscribing or donating to have me play one of your deck lists on stream. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in today. This was helpful for me, and I hope helpful for you as well. And, you know, for my regular viewers, thanks. I'll see you again soon. Hold on. I need my schedule. Latin Academy timing gets a little wonky. I have to check my schedule to see when I can actually stream, because we got a holiday coming up. So today's Tuesday. So that's 4th of July. That's class. All right, next stream, in all likelihood, will be Friday morning at about 9 a.m. East, maybe 9 or 9:15 a.m. Eastern time. So Friday morning, we will shoot for trying out Remorseful Cleric and Bright Bling and learn everything we can about this new format. Captain Hammer, thank you very much for subscribing. I appreciate your support. Rohan, that is a great question. Let's field that one. So what do I think about Palace Jailer? Until I know if Palace Jailer is going to be good in the format, I don't want Palace Jailer in my deck. If there's not a lot of like True Name and Baleful Strix and Snapcaster Mage running around, then I'll probably put Jailer back in. Like, Jailer is one of the cards that can go back into these flex slots down here that are a little bit looser. But until I feel like it's going to be good, I don't think I want to start with it in. Yeah, Static Gripped, I 100% agree there. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I will look forward to seeing you again soon. All right, there's another question. All right. If I played one more Graveyard Hate card, it would be one Containment Priest, but I think 6 Graveyard Hate cards in the 75 is probably about right, and I have 2 Remorseful Clerics in the main deck in this build. If I end up pulling one Remorseful Cleric, I will put a Containment Priest in the board. So thank you all for joining me, and I hope you have a good afternoon. Get out there and play some games, and if you have any cool data, share it with me and other people. I want to see how this format is shaping up. Cheers.